Greetings and welcome to Meet a CHM Family Member. My name is Cory MacDonald. I am the Engagement Director for the Choroideremia Research Foundation. I would like to, before we get into this, thank our sponsors, Biogen, Spark Therapeutics, and Santen for funding these projects that allow us to do these things. And today I have with me a good friend, fellow CHMer, and a fellow metalhead, so we get along well. His name is BJ Stinger from Idaho. Welcome, BJ.
Thank you, Cory. It's great to be here.
I'm psyched you're here, man. And full disclosure, BJ and I were just a few weeks ago sitting at a brewery in Portland, having a couple of beers and having dinner, and we were discussing doing this. And the poor guy said yes, so it's his fault.
Yeah.
So BJ, now you're from Idaho, and
Yes.
So there's not a lot of CHM. Although I did just put you in touch with another semi-local CHMer recently, though. But you're one of very few CHMers from Idaho. So, but hey, that's cool. Now, I find it interesting personally that you work as a mental health counselor, and and of course it raises the question, us CHMers always seem to be a little bit wacky anyway, and but how did you get into that arena? Now, is that something you've been doing for a long time, or did you do something beforehand and then segue over?
Well, I mean, basically when I was 13 years old, I read the book Helter Skelter.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I was actually taking a music class in junior high, and the teacher was talking about the 60s, and she got into the Beatles. And then of course, when you're in the 60s, you talk about the Beatles, you got to bring up Charles Manson. And, it's like, I can remember everything about that moment. And then I was living with my dad in Pocatello, going to school. And then my mom came to pick me up for the weekend, and I just grilled her about Charles Manson, about the whole thing. I was fascinated. So before we even went home in Blackfoot, she took me to a used bookstore and bought me a copy of Helter Skelter and said, read this. And then I had more questions after reading the book. And she said, you need to go into psychology. That's something you should really, if you're this inquisitive about this stuff, you should think about psychology. So I got my bachelor's in psychology, started working where I'm at now, and it just kind of went down that road. And now I'm just finished my first year of graduate school to get a master's in social work to be a therapist. So that's scary.
So we can thank Charles Manson for your career. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I actually read Helter Skelter probably right around at that same age, between 13, 15 years old. Yeah. Manson was one of those, always just that type of psychopath, I guess is the best word, but just intriguing to a young teenager. See, we were separated at birth, I swear.
Yeah.
even though I'm several years older than you.
Yeah.
So obviously, as we segue from that, you get into horror movies and and music and of course, as I mentioned, you and I both like metal, but do you like other styles of music as well, or?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I really liked back in the 80s, I liked, the 80s rap. I had a few of that stuff. I even liked some musicals like Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera, that kind of stuff. And I've always had an appreciation for classical music too. Not like in depth, but just, if I hear it, I'm like, wow, I know some of the bigger names. I think they were the rock stars of their era.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you have it like me, like, people know I love my metal, yes, and but do you get that from people that they think that because you like metal that's like all you listen to? I get
Yeah,
that from people all the time. I'm like, they don't understand. I'm just as comfortable listening to Cat Stevens
yeah,
as I am listening to Iron Maiden. It's yeah, we like this stuff, but there's other things too.
yeah. Gordon Lightfoot, or
Yeah.
stuff. You have to be in a different mood, but it does happen.
Yeah, I just don't do the top 40 pop stuff. That's about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one of the ones I just can't seem to get into is country.
Yeah, yeah, there's that. Although I am gonna write a country song someday. I have to. Well, see, the high school that I went to ended up being sold to a developer, and they turned my old high school into condos.
Oh wow.
And there is no other genre of music but country that can handle the title of "My High School Went Condo."
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that just screams country, and you can already hear the steel guitars in the background with that title.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's let's move on. We'll try to get a little bit serious now, okay? As I go to the glasses. Oh, I was going to ask you before I get into. So now you mentioned that you really like horror movies. Now, do you like the more mental thriller or the hack and slash type, or
Anything
no?
really.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
ever seen? It's an old movie from the 70s. It's called Burnt Offerings.
Yes.
I love that. Is by far my favorite horror movie.
Yeah. I get so my dad used to rent videos. They used to live about a block and a half away from a grocery store that had a video store in it.
Nice.
It's funny, I was just telling this exact same story yesterday at work. And he used to go and rent the movie, I mean, the cheapest, just not horror movies, just cheap movies.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was a teen, 12, 13 years old, that wondering if he got like Terminator or Top Gun or something. And he's like, no, I got this movie about rooster fighting. It's like, what? And now I find myself loving cheap horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like my stepmom reminded me that I told my dad once that I joked with him that the movies that he rented cost more to rent than they did to make. And I'm finding myself doing the same thing right now with horror movies, just like watching the cheaper the better.
Yeah, like they call the old B movies, as they call them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. That is cool. So on this now, how has CHM? Well, you were like many CHMers. You were diagnosed early on with RP.
Correct.
And it changed the diagnosis when you were older. Now, was the change due to a genetic testing, or did you just see a different doctor and they
saw a different doctor? So, my mom was hyper vigilant with this. Her father, my grandpa, was blind. And so she got me diagnosed with RP. If I remember right, I was 4. And I'm not exactly sure where we were at. But then when I was 21, I think I was about 20, 21 years old. My wife and I, well, she was my fiance. Then we went to Moran Eye Center and saw Dr. Mano Schwartz. And I still remember it. He walked, did the testing. He comes in and he says, Well, I got some good news for you. You do not have retinitis pigmentosa. And the weight of the world was lifted. I felt like just so exuberant. And I said, really? I got all excited. And he says, now calm down. There's bad news. It's choroideremia. And it's pretty much the same situation. It works a little differently, but they are cross-diagnosed a lot. So that would have been probably like 93 or 94, I think.
Okay.
That
That's so, I mean, the number of people that I hear, really, it's many more people are diagnosed with RP first before CHM. But I've seen it the other way too, where I've seen people diagnosed with CHM that ended up having RP.
Huh.
A lot more, more rare, but I have seen that happen.
Yeah, my grandpa, when he passed away in 2012, or actually 2011, he was still diagnosed as RP.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he had been blind for 40 years, so I don't know if I don't think he ever really went back to the eye doctor.
Yeah, that's why I really appreciate the doctor that diagnosed me. Well, I had a cousin, my mom, on my mom's generational level, so he was 22 years older than I, somewhere in there. And he was the one who was first diagnosed, and his grandfather, my great grandfather, was blind. He passed away in 64, so that was long before there was a diagnosis of anything. But then my cousin got diagnosed in 68 with RP, and he was sent to Boston for a follow-up at Mass Eye and Ear. And the doctor there, and this is 1968, when they didn't know a whole heck of a lot about any eye diseases then. People went blind. That's, that was it. And,
yeah.
But yet this doctor, with the basics of back then, when you look at the technology that's available now for diagnostic testing, it's a big difference. But he looked at him and said, no, you don't have RP, you have choroideremia. And then everybody in the family got called in, and that's when I got diagnosed when I was 4. And many years later, in 2009, it was confirmed with genetic testing. But I still, now and then I think about that. I'm going, that's amazing that doctor was able to differentiate the two even back then.
Yeah.
So, obviously he knew his stuff.
Yeah.
So now, but the good thing about CHM is, besides that, on the average, we maintain sight a little bit longer than people with RP, but we're also better looking and more intelligent. We've claimed those as side effects for many years. But, so now, so besides the good looks and intelligence, and losing your sight, but how has CHM personally affected you?
I mean, personally, it's affected me in every way. It has made me become the person that I am. You learn different things about you shouldn't be in a hurry. When you're blind, that just creates more problems. It has taught me to persevere, always have hope. I mean, it affected the way I chose what to major in college.
I was going to ask you that if that had a factor in choosing the career that you ended up picking.
Yeah, it did. It affects the way I think about all kinds of stuff. But it has also personally affected me in positive ways. I have become associated with the CRF, which is, that happened about 5 years ago. And right now I sit on the board of commissioners for the Idaho Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I was actually appointed by the previous governor of Idaho and confirmed by the Senate, the Idaho State Senate, and then and then the National Federation for the Blind. I've met amazing people in all of those. The Idaho Commission for the Blind, they have about 8 years ago, I spent 2.5 months up at their assessment and training center. They have dorm rooms there, and yeah, you live there for 2.5 months. You take classes in computers, orientation and mobility, activities of daily living, like such as cooking, braille, and wood shop. And it's and they teach a lot of stuff there. And without having this eye disease, I wouldn't have come into contact with any of these amazing people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what adjustments have you made? Or what adjustments has CHM foisted upon you? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In your life, because obviously we have to adjust, and we have to, as things, I always think of REO's role with the changes, we have to kind of, for us, it's really no choice. We have to do that. And so I'm always interested to know, like, adjustments you have made, in your day-to-day life, just to kind of make life a little easier for you.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It's a constant change. Right when you get used to your vision being a certain way, then bam, you hit 40 years old, and then your vision starts getting worse, just because you hit 40, and it's like, oh, okay. But a lot of the adjustments that I've made, in this room, I have a light on right now for just so it's better for you to see me. But like if I'm down here doing homework, that light is off and this thing's pitch black down here. I've hit that stage where lighting is more intrusive than helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And like you go into a restaurant or that brewery in Portland, and you want to make sure that you're not facing the outdoor light, because it just, it kind of just interferes with everything.
Yeah.
But
it's funny, just to interject real quick. It's funny when you have a group of CHMers that all go out to dinner, 4 or 5 of us, and this has happened more than once, and we're all fighting for the seats that have our back to the sunlight.
yeah. I tell my wife all the time, if we're going to something like that at a restaurant or something, I'm like, let's get there a little early so that I can pick a spot with my back to the windows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it has that effect. And then like I said earlier, it's taught me how to prepare for how to be on time for things. Give yourself extra time, because you cannot be in a hurry. You'll put on 2 different colored shoes, which I've done a few times. And it's taught me, some people have told me that I'm patient, and I'm just like, well, I am. I don't think so, but I've had people tell me that I am, and I'm like, okay, so I guess that probably has something to do with it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger lessons in it, and it, learning to be, you get to a point where you have to learn to be patient with yourself. And when you start being patient with yourself, it actually reflects onto other people as well. You just become overall a little more patient with other people.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, do you use any types of, you mentioned all the schooling and stuff. Now, do you use any types of adaptive technologies at this point, or?
Yeah. For schooling, I use So Idaho State University, through disability services, gave me, it's called Read and Write Gold. And it's a reading software. That's what reads my books to me. The Idaho Commission for the Blind put me in touch with the company's called Dolphin Supernova software.
Hmm. That's
So you what?
I've never heard of that. No.
Yeah, apparently it's a newer one. I mean, everybody's more they recognize, Freedom Scientific and Jaws is the big one.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one that I have, the Supernova, for us CHMers and probably even RP, for it actually will adjust. It's for low vision and for total blindness.
Okay.
So you can use it as the progression goes along. My mouse pointer is super large with a big red crosshair that goes from the top of the bottom and the left to the right of the entire screen. That kind of stuff. And then disability services has somebody that'll take notes for me.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they go to class and they sit there just like a student and type up all the notes and then send them to me in an email. And
wow,
then,
so you're like a star athlete at a big college.
yeah, except for I don't score touchdowns or I don't slam dunk anything.
Let somebody else go to class for you. Take notes.
Yeah, yeah.
That is great though, that they, I know it's interesting because every state has its own system in place. And some, I've heard horror stories from some and just rave reviews from others. And, like I'm lucky that, my state, the system they have put in, you don't go to school, but, pretty much they come to you.
Oh, wow.
And if you want to go to, if I want to go to college, or, I'm a little too old for that now, but if, my younger years, if I wanted to go to college, in Massachusetts, you can go to any college you want, and it is free up to what you would pay at a state college for that same course. So if I went to, say, UMass Amherst, that would be free because that's a state college. But then if I wanted to go to Western New England University, because that's a private school and it's more expensive, the state covers up to what I would have paid for those same courses at UMass, and then anything on top of that I have to cover. So it's still it's a pretty good deal. And then they provide the mobility training, they do voc rehab, but it's all done in-house.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
They send people right to your home. So yeah, different way of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And and the thing I really appreciate, in Massachusetts, all public transportation is free for me and a guide.
Oh,
and we have it's not fantastic, but we have a decent bus system here in town. And so I can walk down to the end of my street, which is about 100 feet, and there's a bus stop right there. Then I hop on the bus, and that brings me downtown to the bus station, and I can hop on any other bus and go get pretty much anywhere that I need to get to within the city.
Wow. Yeah. I'm small town Idaho, and I have to use cab services.
Or, Uber.
Uber here. We are such a small town that we do have Uber, but we don't have a bunch of drivers. So it's high priced.
Oh.
It actually would cost me an extra $4 just to get to work. I live 2 miles away from my work. But it's the bus. I mean, that is, and where I work in mental health, there's you want to have your privacy from the clients and stuff. So the cabs are just an easier way. They are more expensive, but yeah, it's, gee, even recently I've thought about, gee, maybe I should just try a bike. I mean, just, elbow, knee pad, helmeted up, put, you know, and
And
just,
it, and that's fine until wintertime hits anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you could always look into getting a like a recumbent bike, the three-wheeler recumbent bikes.
Uh-huh.
That
Yeah.
gives you a little bit more stuff in front of you in case you crash into something. It's not, as devastating.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't think it would be in case I crash. It would be when and how many times I crash.
I know the feeling, bro.
Yeah.
So, and before we started recording, we were chit-chatting a little bit, and you mentioned that you want to come to a conference. You have been to one of our regional meetings that we held. And what was it like, coming to the meeting and then just being around all these other CHMers?
That was the first time I had ever been around. I mean, besides, Thanksgiving, with my grandpa and my cousin.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the first time of people outside of my family that I had been around, that was neat. You got up, and you gave an explanation of choroideremia that, I don't even think a lot of the eye doctors had been able to put into words. It was really neat. And trying to remember exactly when that was, because it was before Portland.
I'm trying to think. That was the fall of 2016,
So yeah, it was a little bit before
5
Portland.
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, just how you were describing earlier, that's what happened. I went to my cousin. I was actually sitting in this basement one day, and it was a couple years after my term at the training center in Boise. And I just was sitting in my basement one day, and I just said, it's going to happen. You're going to go blind. You're just going to have to, come to grips with it. It's not going to be a good thing, but you got great support. And you can deal with it. And I don't remember exactly how long later, but it seems like just days later, my cousin called and said, you need to go to the Moran Eye Center. They've got testing going on for trials and studies. So I went down there, and plus that's when I got the genetic testing done to scientifically confirm the disease. And then they did exactly like you said. They took my email, gave it to Bob, and he told me about Miami, the testing being done in Miami. And I even called them. I was on the phone with the coordinator in Miami, and then she just in passing just mentioned Portland, Oregon. And I said, well, I live in Idaho. That would be a lot easier travel wise. It would also be a lot cheaper for the sponsor. So yeah, I mean, it's funny how all that just kind of changed that one day.
Yeah. I have the advantage of around since the start of the CRF. And so I get that long view, and I remember, I look back, and I keep looking back now to, when we started, when there was not even an animal model to do research with, and that was just 21 years ago.
Yeah.
And that kind of segues us into the next question, which is, how do you feel about what is going on with research on CHM at this point?
It's awesome. I really, like I was saying, I was sitting 5 years ago, sitting in this basement, just trying to come to grips. And now there's hope for future generations. And that hit me in Portland, met Mike, and a few other guys that were in Portland for that, that 2-week period. And
Yeah.
it was like, wow, there's even more guys, that I haven't met before. And it's really cool. I think back to when I was younger. I remember my mom, my mom was awesome with this whole thing, hyper vigilant, made me take cod liver oil when I was young. Like, I remember vitamin A coming in the gel caplets. It was like Christmas morning when I knew I didn't have to take cod liver oil anymore. I could just take this with a drink of water and I'm done. And there was even a phase when I was about 7 where they thought electronic stimulation to the eyes would help the blood flow. So you had to put these little things on your eyes with wet washcloths. The things you put on your eyes, it reminded me of the coils on your stovetop.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were attached to what looked like a little battery charger, and you put that wet washcloth with that in there, and it basically shocked your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing that. I remember doing that with my grandpa, putting it on my grandpa's eyes, and I accidentally bumped the shock and turned it up, and he wasn't too happy with me, but and now it's actually it's turned a corner, and it's looking really, really good. And I'm glad to be that you guys put me on the path to the the natural history study and the gene therapy. It's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, I'm really thankful that I was able to get into it, because like initially I didn't qualify, not even for the natural history study, because they had one of the exclusion criteria was asymmetrical deterioration, which is me to a T, because my right eye is pretty much gone and my left eye still holds some really good central vision. And then as they were recruiting for the natural history study, and this is going back 5+ years now, they started running into trouble with getting some older people into the natural history study, because I can't say all of us, but a vast majority of us, it seems as you get older, like one eye kind of falls off a cliff while the other one continues the slow, steady progression. And so they couldn't find enough patients, so they ended up changing the criteria. And that's when I was able to get into the natural history study. But I'm like you, I'm happy I was able to participate in the trials and try to help push this forward, and the CRF, of course, has been what does the CRF mean to you, and how has that what we've done impacted your life?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, first and foremost, it has given me hope. And that's it's huge. I mean, you can't even really measure what hope does for somebody that's slowly but surely, over decades time going blind. And yeah, I have the same issue, except for my off the cliff eye is my left eye.
Mm-hmm.
And then my right eye is the one that seems to be doing better again until I turned 40. Then it seemed like the right eye started going a little bit quicker. But no, the CRF has just given me a lot of hope. I am very grateful for everything that you guys do. I wish there was more that I could do.
We can talk about that.
Yeah. I've come in contact with just amazing people, just like with the NFB and the Commission for the Blind. The CRF has great taste in music.
So now to kind of start wrapping this up a little bit now, what kind of, picture yourself and you're talking to a younger CHMer, 12, 13 years old. What kind of life advice would you give them?
The life advice I would give them would be to not give up. Always be optimistic. Wear your sunglasses outside when it's sunny.
Oh yeah.
And follow as much of the recommendations as you can, like eat the dark leafy greens, and just always, again, just always have hope for what can happen in the future. I mean, that in the last 5 years, it is completely, from what I knew, it completely did a 180 in the last 5 years. So, I mean, there's stuff out there. Just don't give up and always just keep pushing forward. And if you do get knocked down, you get back up again. I learned that actually, speaking of music, I was at a Suicidal Tendencies concert a few years ago, and Mike Muir said that to the crowd. He said, all you got to do to be successful at anything in life is you got to get up one more time than you get knocked down, and you will achieve everything.
Yeah, that's great advice. That is great advice. Well, listen, BJ, I could sit here and talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
However, we do have limited time. So I want to thank you again for agreeing to do this. I had a great time. I hope you did too.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all soon. Talk to you all later.